The movie begins with a terrifying sequence. Zoe is trapped in a suffocating, blazing inferno. The heat is unbearable as she watches her own house burn to the ground, with her precious son Timmy trapped inside the flames. Just as the horror peaks, Zoe violently gasps and wakes up. It was only a nightmare. Breathing heavily, she realizes she is safe in her own bed. In reality, Zoe's life seems completely perfect. She has built a beautiful, happy family with her husband Barry and their beloved young son. Timmy, Zoe, and Barry share a unique bond because they both work together at the same local police department. Zoe is a highly skilled member of the department's elite research team. Currently, she is carrying the heavy burden of tracking down the city's most notorious, elusive rapist, using advanced technological surveillance to hunt him down. After a long, exhausting day at the precinct, Zoe heads to Timmy's school to pick him up. She spends the rest of the afternoon happily bonding with her son, cherishing every moment. When night falls, she lovingly tucks him into bed and falls asleep right beside him. But while Zoe is resting, her husband's night is just beginning. Barry is not at home or working a late shift at the station. Instead, he is sitting in a dimly lit bar, conducting shady, high-stakes business deals while surrounded by other women. Back at the house, the quiet night is suddenly broken. Zoe is jolted awake by a suspicious noise downstairs. Believing an intruder has broken into their home, she quietly reaches for her handgun, loads a magazine, and cautiously creeps down the dark staircase ready to defend her son. But as she sweeps the room with her weapon, her racing heart slows down. It isn't a burglar. It's just Barry, resting quietly in the living room. Relieved but exhausted, Zoe heads back upstairs to sleep. The next morning, it is back to the grind. At the police station, Zoe and her colleagues are deeply engrossed in their investigation, meticulously analyzing the tragic details of the victims targeted by the serial rapist. But what Zoe doesn't realize is that the hunt goes both ways. In a dark, hidden basement, the very criminal she is trying to catch is sitting at a computer, actively researching her and digging up her personal information. A few days later, Zoe meets up with her best friend Anne for a morning jog before work. After they run and eat breakfast in the house, the conversation naturally shifts to their marriages. Anne, who loves to gossip, starts complaining about her own husband before turning the spotlight onto Barry. She asks Zoe how things are going, pointing out that Barry always seems to come home incredibly late. "You two never fight?" Anne asks, her voice laced with skepticism. Zoe brushes off the concern, assuring Anne that their relationship is perfectly fine. But Anne isn't convinced. She'll bluntly tell Zoe that Barry exhibits all the classic signs of a cheating husband and strongly advises her to start investigating him. Zoe, terrified of ruining her supposedly happy marriage, completely rejects her friend's advice and acts as if everything is normal. But the seed of doubt has been planted. That night, lying in bed alone, Zoe sends Barry a simple text message. "Where are you?" Barry doesn't reply until the next morning, brushing her off with flimsy excuses. The excuses feel hollow, and Zoe's suspicions immediately skyrocket. Determined to find the truth, she asks Anne to house sit and watch Timmy for the evening. Instead of staying home, Zoe heads straight to the police station, tracking down Barry's work partner. Through clever questioning, she manages to extract Barry's actual, secret location for that night. Zoe drives to the location, a nightclub. She parks her car in the shadows and waits. After a tense stakeout, her worst nightmare comes true. She spots Barry walking out of the club, intimately wrapping his arms around another woman. Zoe's heart shatters into a million pieces. The reality of his betrayal hits her like a physical blow. Devastated, she'll go back to Anne, finally confirming that her husband is indeed having an affair. Meanwhile, the unseen danger grows closer. The rapist has escalated his obsession with Zoe, successfully tracking her movements and printing out a physical photograph of her to keep in his dark lair. Zoe remains completely oblivious to the stalker, her mind entirely consumed by her husband's betrayal. That night, when Barry finally returns home, he finds the front door dead-bolted. Zoe refuses to let him inside. An explosive, screaming argument erupts through the door. Fearing things will get violent, Zoe calls her own police department for backup. When the squad cars arrive with flashing lights, Zoe completely loses her temper. In front of all their colleagues, she publicly exposes Barry's infidelity. Barry flies into a massive rage, and the two nearly come to blows before their fellow officers step in to separate and calm them down. The next morning, Zoe tries to bury her pain in her work. She is diligently tracking the rapist's digital footprint when she suddenly gets a live ping on his location. But just as quickly as the signal appears, the criminal vanishes from the grid, leaving her with a dead end. When Zoe returns to her empty home later that evening, she unlocks the door to find Barry waiting for her. His demeanor has completely changed. He gently asks to explain the situation from the other night. He claims that he has been working as a highly classified undercover agent. The woman at the club, the drinking it, was all just a dangerous part of his assignment to maintain his cover. He begs for her forgiveness. Exhausted and desperately wanting her family to stay together, Zoe believes his elaborate lies and forgives him. But the peace is fragile. The next night, after putting Timmy to sleep, Zoe is relaxing online, unaware that the rapist has just successfully bypassed her firewall and pinpointed her exact home address. Later, Zoe visits Anne to discuss her lingering anxieties about Barry. Anne gives her tough love, telling her that since Barry cheated once, she needs to move on and start a new life. Zoe is still holding on to hope for her marriage, but Anne's words resonate. To protect herself, she secretly consults a divorce lawyer the following day. Tensions between the couple finally snap at the precinct. Barry's casually flirting with a beautiful female colleague, but instead of flirting back, the woman hands him a piece of paper. It is a harsh survey detailing her negative opinions of him. Barry is humiliated and immediately blames Zoe, assuming she orchestrated the insult. He is furious. Barry's friend pulls him aside, warning him that entering a nasty legal battle with his wife over custody and divorce will drain all his money. He tells Barry to think about his kid, but Barry is too stubborn and enraged to listen. He storms over to Timmy's school, intending to take the boy away. When the school principal intervenes, Barry violently argues with him but is ultimately forced to leave without his son. Still boiling with rage, Barry heads to the police station to confront Zoe directly. Knowing he is unhinged, Zoe actively avoids him. When he finally catches up to her, Barry suddenly changes his strategy and tries to apologize again. But Zoe has had enough. She looks him in the eye, tells him that her only priority is her son, completely cuts ties with her cheating husband, and coldly states, "I'll see you in court." While Zoe is out finalizing the end of her marriage, a dark figure silently breaks into her empty home. The intruder heads straight for the kitchen. He carefully opens Zoe's favorite box of tea bags, remove the actual tea, and replace it with bags heavily laced with powerful knockout sedatives. Before slipping out into the shadows, the intruder drops a freshly smoked cigarette directly onto the wooden floor. That night, perfectly following her routine, Zoe puts Timmy to bed and heads to the kitchen to brew her evening tea. She'll drink the tea and walk back to her bed and sleep. After she sleeps, the powerful drugs rapidly take effect. Suddenly, because of a lit cigarette, massive house fire begin to grow rapidly. The flames spread violently, consuming the walls and ceiling. The thick, choking smoke finally forces Zoe to regain a sliver of consciousness. Coughing and crawling on her hands and knees, she desperately tries to make her way to Timmy's bedroom, but the drugs in her system are too strong. She collapses again on the way. Zoe is pulled from the inferno by a team of brave firefighters. As she lies coughing on the front lawn, she frantically screams that her son is still inside. The firefighters solemnly return from the ashes, bringing out a severely burned, unrecognizable body. Believing she has just witnessed the charred remains of her own child, Zoe screams in absolute agony and faints from the sheer trauma in the aftermath. A completely broken Zoe arranges a heartbreaking funeral for Timmy. Plunged into a deep, paralyzing depression, she stops going to work altogether. Surprisingly, Barry stays by her side, comforting her through the grief. Eventually, Zoe's sorrow turns into vengeful rage. Convinced that the serial rapist she was tracking burned down her house to stop her investigation, She gears up and leads a rogue SWAT raid on the suspect's location. But when they kick the doors down, they don't find a criminal mastermind. It is just an innocent 16-year-old amateur gamer and hacker. The raid is a massive, embarrassing disaster. Chief Turner fiercely reprimands Zoe's entire research team, ordering them to drop their personal vendettas and get back to proper police work, drowning in pressure and trauma. Zoe receives an urgent message to report to the station. When she arrives, Chief Turner immediately begins interrogating her about the night of the fire. A colleague steps forward, stating that the fire investigators proved the blaze was started by a dropped cigarette. Zoe aggressively denies this, stating she quit smoking a long time ago. The chief suggests that her extreme stress caused a relapse. Zoe refuses to accept this, pointing out that Barry doesn't smoke either. But then, her colleague drops a bombshell. Zoe's blood tests from the night of the fire came back positive for massive amounts of sedatives and nicotine because she was the only one home. The department formally charges her with arson and the murder of her own son. She is stripped of her badge and thrown directly into a cold jail cell. Desperate and helpless, Zoe begs Anne for support. But Anne turns her back on her because they had shared drinks together in the past. Anne firmly believes Zoe was secretly smoking and is responsible for the fire. Even Zoe's defense attorney admits that the physical evidence is far too strong. No jury will ever believe her. Sitting in despair, Anne brings her a box of her surviving possessions. But Zoe is fully focused on life insurance bill. Zoe's eyes widen as she reads it. Barry didn't take out a policy on her. He took out a massive life insurance policy specifically on Timmy. A horrifying realization clicks into place. She grabs Timmy's surviving storybook, memories flooding her mind. She demands to see Barry, begging him for help. But Barry coldly kicks her out of his new place, looking her dead in the eye and calling her a murderer, refusing to leave. Zoe notices something impossible inside Barry's parked car, one of Timmy's distinct personal toys. Adrenaline surging, she rushes back to the police station, attempting to access her old research room to investigate Barry. Her former teammates physically block her, reminding her she is a murder suspect. Coincidentally, Barry is also at the station, officially resigning from the force and handing in his gear, realizing she is entirely on her own. Zoe waits for the perfect moment. While meeting with her lawyer in a holding area, a violent inmate suddenly overpowers a guard and steals his weapon. Seeing an opportunity, Zoe bravely tackles the inmate, disarms him, and hands the gun back to the stunned officer, making herself look like a hero. In the ensuing chaos, she slips out the back door and escapes into the city. She finds a homeless encampment, steals a discarded wig, and disguises herself. Under the cover of night, she sneaks right back into the police precinct and hacks into the mainframe. While a former colleague grows suspicious of the figure at the desk, Zoe works frantically. She compares the DNA sample from the burned body in her house to the DNA of another body from car accident case. After she compared the result, come out and it's a perfect match. The body in the fire was a stolen corpse. Timmy wasn't in the fire. He is alive. Just as a pathologist walks in, Zoe calmly pretends to be a fellow employee and walks right out the front door as she leaves. Barry's friend spots her disguise and gives chase, but Zoe manages to lose him in the alleys. The next morning, she drives straight to Barry's house, but it's locked up tight. A neighbor approaches, and Zoe lies, claiming to be Barry's sister. The neighbor casually mentions that Barry just packed up and left town with his young son, knowing Timmy is safe, but in the hands of a psychopath. Zoe tries one last time to convince Anne, but her friend still thinks she has lost her mind. With no other options, Zoe ambushes her former colleague in an alley, pressing a heavy stick into his back to mimic a gun, and strips him of his actual weapon. She quickly explains everything: Barry's trap, the fake body, the planted nicotine, and the insurance fraud. She begs for his help to save her son. Believing her, the colleague helps Zoe track down the 16-year-old hacker they accidentally raided earlier. She essentially kidnapped the teenager, forcing him to help them execute a master plan. Zoe and the hacker track Barry to a remote safe house. Watching from the corner of building, Zoe sees Barry laughing and playing with Timmy. She needs a confession. Using the kids' elite hacking skills, they override the police department's internal servers. Suddenly, the entire research team at the precinct is watching a live, unhackable video feed from a camera on Zoe's chest. At first, the police think Zoe is about to commit a murder, but instead they watch as Zoe stealthily sneaks into the yard, grabs Timmy, and whispers for him to hide in the bushes and wait for her. The police immediately realize she has been telling the truth the entire time. Chief Turner screams at his team to trace the live feed's location. With Timmy safe, Zoe hides a digital recorder in her pocket and kicks open the door to the safe house. She confronts Barry, demanding to know why he faked Timmy's death. Barry plays dumb, denying everything. Zoe smirks, tells him Timmy is alive, and turns to leave. Panicking, Barry blocks the exit. Zoe draws her stolen gun, aiming it right at his chest. She lays out all his crimes, drugging her, burning the house, stealing a morgue body, and attempting to cash in the life insurance. Pushed to the brink, Barry explodes in anger. Believing he has the upper hand, he confesses to every single detail. And say her, "What are you going to do, Zoe?" The entire police department hears the confession live. Barry suddenly lunges forward. Disarming Zoe, they crash to the floor in a brutal struggle, the guns sliding out of reach. Barry pins Zoe down, wrapping his hands tightly around her throat. But suddenly, Timmy steps into the doorway, staring in horror at his father. Barry's grip loosens in shock. Zoe uses the distraction to strike Barry in the face, grabbing Timmy and sprinting into a bedroom, slamming the heavy wooden door shut. As Barry violently throws his weight against the wood, trying to break it down, Zoe and Timmy escape through a back window and run toward the parked cars. Barry finally smashes through the door and sprints outside. He finds Zoe standing next to his car. She points her gun at him and demands the keys. Barry refuses, screaming wildly for Timmy to get out of the vehicle. Zoe looks at him with pure, cold revenge. She aims her weapon at the car's gas tank and pulls the trigger. The vehicle erupts into a massive, fiery explosion. Believing his son was just incinerated, Barry falls to his knees, screaming and sobbing hysterically in absolute agony. But it was all a psychological trick. Zoe wanted him to feel the exact soul-crushing pain he had put her through. She calls out, and Timmy safely steps out from hiding. Zoe drops her weapon and pulls her son into a tight, emotional embrace. Sirens wail as a swarm of police cars surrounds the property. The officers arrest a broken, sobbing Barry. The movie ends with Zoe officially divorcing the man who tried to destroy her, finally able to live a peaceful, happy life with the son she saved. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, make sure to like this video and subscribe for the next upload.